Hi there, this is Mark from Wildebeest Games, and welcome to a tutorial video showing you some of the features and processes from the work in progress Detonate 3 title I've been working on for the last 6 months. I'm going to show you how to create a building from scratch and give you an insight into how the editor works, go through some of the menus and show you some of the options, and then we can try setting up a challenge or two. Hopefully watching a video will be a lot easier than trying to forge through pages and pages of a document. So when you first spark the title up, you get the opening screen here, and the menu on the left gives you access to all of the features of the game. So the first thing that you want to be doing is picking which level you want to work with. So I'm going to focus on the editor first and then come back to actually playing the game later on in the video. If you want to start a brand new level with nothing on it, then you need to pick the blank option from the list of available environments. If you want to edit a level that's already existing, then obviously you can pick one of those, and I'll come back to that in a minute, but I'll pick a blank one first, and you can see that the only option I've got underneath there is to edit it. I can't actually play that level, it wouldn't make any sense because there's nothing in there yet. Before I go into the editor, just really quickly, there's obviously quick to desktop, does what it says, and then the options menu gives us the option to change the screen resolutions and also change the volume of stuff. And if, like me, you're a bit fed up with the menu music already, we can do that. I'll get the sound effects down quite low because while I'm speaking I don't want to be drowned out by the sound of stuff blowing up. So I'll save those settings, come back to the main menu. So I want to create a level from scratch. I'm going to pick the blank option and I'll click on edit, and that will take us through to an empty level. So there's a number of different things that you can change in the editor. Obviously you can create geometry, buildings, scenery, that type of thing. You can also create challenges for when the player's playing the game. You can set up the criteria of how you want the challenge to work. You do that inside the editor, and then you can also modify the landscape as well that the building's actually sat on. So I'll do the landscape bit first because we haven't got any buildings here to look at, and it seems to make sense. The landscape is extremely simplistic. It's just a series of big cubes, if you will, big rectangles, and I can pick on each of these in turn. I left click on the landscape. I should say as well that I can navigate the camera around using your usual movement keys for PC, which is W, A, S and D on the keyboard for the movement, left, right, backwards and forwards. And then if I right click on the mouse and hold it down and move the mouse around, you can see that I can change my viewpoint. So that's kind of the camera movement, and that works not only in the editor, but it's also the same for when you come to play the game as well. So I've clicked on this landscape tile, and I've got a number of icons that have appeared here. Most of it is fairly self-explanatory, I hope. We've got an up and down arrow which will raise or lower the height of this particular tile or building block for the landscape. If you move the block down far enough, there is actually a water table, and so the water will appear. You can't turn the water off because it's kind of there all the time, but if you wanted to create a feature like a river or a canal basin, say, then what you would do is you would work your way across the landscape and just systematically lower the floor to the level that you wanted it at, or indeed raise it up again to get rid of where the water's appearing. The landscape tiles themselves start out with this sort of dull grey colour. You've got a variety of options of how you want that landscape tile to be textured, and you can cycle through those using the plus and minus icons, and there's a variety of different types of landscape texture to try and make the scenery around the building look a little bit more interesting. The texture that you create, or the texture that you pick, can also be rotated, so there isn't a variation of the texture for each of the different rotations. If you just click on the rotation arrow, it'll turn the texture around, and so if you're placing a road, for example, then you can easily just use the predefined tiles and choose it as you see fit. You can change the look of the landscape in that way. So what I tend to do is I tend to, on the couple of landscapes that are in the early access 0.1 version, I should say, which is obviously what this video is talking about, I tend to create the landscape first because that's the easiest thing. And then once you've created the landscape, I can then create the building or structures and scenery on top of that. That seems to be the best way of working. There's no reason why you have to do it in that order, but if you do start moving the landscape around, what it will do is it will move up or down any elements that are on top of these tiles. So if you've built a building that's across a couple of tiles and you want to suddenly decide that you want to raise one of those tiles by an amount, then half the building will move up and down. The reason that it does that is because if you were to move the tile up and down and the building didn't move, potentially you could wind up with elements of the building kind of under the ground, which wouldn't make a great deal of sense to the physics engine. So create your landscape is sort of best advice. I mean, it doesn't have to be perfect, just do it roughly. And then the next step is to start and add some elements into the scene. So we've got a number of different menus at the bottom here. The one on the right hand side we'll come to a bit later because that's the challenge menu. These over here are more related to actually adding elements into the environment. So the first one, the building one, this revolves around saving and loading this entire scene. So the one I've loaded is called blank, and it won't actually let me overwrite that for obvious reasons, because if you did, you'd never be able to start an empty building again. So I'm going to just quickly put in a name there for this particular scene, and I've got the option of saving it, or indeed if I've been working on one and I wanted to get rid of it, I can press delete. Some of the pre-built landscapes you can't delete them, such as the blank one. There's a tutorial level, and also there's a level which is used as the background on the menu, and you can't delete that one either for obvious reasons. Otherwise, when you open the game up, there'd be no menu background. So I'm going to give it a name. I'm going to say save, and that is now a new level. You can also adjust the time of day in this pane. I don't know why it's in there, but pretty much it seemed like, where else would I put it? You can use the slider just to change what time of day you'd like the scene to be when the player's playing it. It doesn't actually have any material effect on the gameplay, except obviously it makes things look a bit different. You can have it so that it's full night time, and some of the elements that you can bring into the game have actually got lights in them, so you can make it look quite scenic if you wanted to. But generally speaking, tend to keep it like a daylight one with a little bit of shadow, so sort of middle of the morning, middle of the afternoon seems to work quite well. When you press save, when you've created a level like we've just done and we've called it test 1, that will store that in your users folder. The location is listed on the web page and in the documentation. You can share those levels just by copying them in and out of that folder, obviously looking to have proper full workshop support for this at a later date when the game becomes in a more complete state. But what I will just show you is it takes a screenshot of the level as you're working on it at that point, and that's what's used in the menu at the beginning. So if I go back to the menu by clicking on the back button at the top left, and I now look down through the list of menus that we've got, scenes that we've got, there's the one that we were just working on and we've just created. So if I click that, I could play it, which wouldn't make a lot of sense because there's no building in it, but I can continue to edit it by pressing edit. I didn't need to come back out to this menu, I just wanted to show you that it's been added into the list of environments. So come back into edit again. Now we get to the more sort of exciting part of the of the tutorial, and we can start to add some items into the level. So there's 4 categories of item that we can add in. The standard building block are these destructible items. So these are the bricks that glue together to form the buildings that are the things that you're actually going to want to destroy as a player, and they're the ones that count towards the percentage destruction for the level if the challenge says you've got to destroy, say, 50% of the building. So that they're like the main building blocks. So as you change the category here, the list of items here underneath will also change. So all of the items that you see here are standard building blocks for the creation of buildings, and you can obviously pick off which one you want to do to insert it. So what I'll do is I'm just going to pick a real standard one, something not very exciting, and in order to bring it into the scene, you click the icon at the bottom to say add selected item, and it brings it into the scene sort of front and center of you, right in front of the camera. So there's a few things to note. First of all of the items that you bring in that are destructible in this manner, the ones that are used for making buildings, they have these nodes on the corners or on the edges, and these nodes vary depending upon what type of block it is that you've brought in. But the idea is that these nodes are like the snap points. They're the connectors that go between all of the different elements. So if you want a building to stay together and not fall apart when you press play, it's essential that you've lined up these snap points with all of the building blocks. I should also say, and this is kind of the title being work in progress, it is possible at this point of development for you to place two items so that they intersect each other, which obviously is less than ideal, because what will happen is the physics engine will try and figure out what's colliding, and two elements inside of each other tends to make it quite upset. So I've brought that item in. We've got the snap points on the edges here, and I'll demonstrate how to use those in a second. But then also we've got these other icons that have appeared on the axes around the item. Fairly self-explanatory, I would hope, but they basically enable you to manipulate the item in the world so you can place it exactly where you like. And you can maneuver it and you can rotate it. It's coloured purple at the moment because it's selected. And this next box here is related to whatever you've got selected. So whether it can be one item or a number of items, and I'll demonstrate that. So if I hit escape or click anywhere where there isn't anything underneath the cursor, then the item will become unhighlighted. And I'm just going to add in another item just so that I can showcase how you can go about manipulating groups of objects. So I'm going to add another plate in, and I'm going to place that one next to that one, and hopefully you can see that those two nodes are now in the same place as each other. So when we come to play this level, those two building blocks will be joined to the floor by the ones underneath, and to each other by this one in the middle. And so when you go to damage it, it knows which bits to break and how strong it is, and so on and so forth. So at the moment I've got one block highlighted. The material for the block is standard brick, and I can change the material of that block by clicking in here and picking off from one of the standard material types. All of these material types and their properties are stored in a text file in the users folder as detailed elsewhere in the documentation and the download page and such. You can add to those as much as you like. You can add more materials in if you want, change what colours they are, change how strong they are, all that sort of thing. And again, I'm obviously looking to make sure that this is as moddable as possible and as shareable as possible. So that is just a plain text file for the materials, and it's stored in the users folder in the location described elsewhere. So for this item, I'm going to change it from being brick to concrete, and to do that I pick concrete and then say update material, and if I now click away from that, you can see that that is now no longer brick and it's become a concrete block. So there's several ways that you can select the elements once you've brought them into the scene. A single left click will just pick each one. If you pick a second one, it'll unselect the first one. However, if you press and hold the control key while you're doing your single left clicks, it will add to the selection set. So I can create a group of objects by doing that. So if I press and hold control and then click, and if I keep control pressed, what it does is it adds or removes items from that selection list. As well as control, you can also use shift to drag a window around items in the scene. So if I press and hold shift and then drag the window, it will pick all of the items that I've got in front of me there and enable me to modify them and rotate them and do all the other things that I'd like to do with them. As as well, of course, as deleting, which is just a simple hit on the delete key. If you've done anything that you don't want to do, then you've always got the undo button down here that you can hit that will step right back through to the beginning of your editing session. Another feature is that you can pick a set of items, and if I press C on the keyboard, it duplicates them. So you can quite quickly and easily create like a template. Say if you were building a larger tower or something similar to that, a building with different floors in it. Once you've created one floor, you can highlight it. I'm going to use Shift for this. I can highlight that. I can say copy. I can move it over here. I can give it a rotation. Drop it back down to the floor. And it becomes quite easy to build up a building in that way, using the different building blocks that are available in that menu. So all of these building blocks are designed to snap together in the same way. They've all got these snap points on, and hopefully it should be reasonably straightforward to understand how they kind of mesh together. So those are the standard building blocks. The other settings are that the three other types of block that you can bring in are basically they're more scenery dependent. So we've got dynamic collidable objects, which are objects that have physics. They can be hit by other pieces of structure and they'll be knocked around the scene, but they don't actually connect to anything else. They just sit in the game world. So a good example of that would be a barrier. So this is just like a construction site barrier, and in the game, now that we've placed that in there, when we play it, if anything is to hit this, it will fall over and behave realistically. So it doesn't count towards the percentage destruction for the level. All it does is it's a bit of scenery that is actually interactable, in the sense that it will get knocked over or damaged or blown away if there's an explosion and so on. And there's a few of these. I'm hoping to add to all of these libraries as well, by the way, when as we work our way through development. So that's the dynamic collidable option, and then the last two are really purely for scenery that you're not really that bothered about being too interactable, but just to make the landscape look a little bit more full, rather than just having the building in the middle of a flat space. So the difference between the final two categories is basically one of them is collidable. So other objects, when they strike them, will bounce off of them, and they won't intersect with each other. So if you if I choose the static collidable option, you can see some of the stuff that we're talking about. So buildings, predominantly in here. What that means is if I place these buildings in the level, they won't move. They're static. They're stuck wherever that I've placed them. But they do have collision. So if you're blowing this building up and parts of it fly through the air, then when they hit this item, they won't go through it. They'll bounce off of it and fall to the floor. And then the last category is no great surprise. These are scenery elements again, but they have no collision whatsoever. So they are literally just visual items. So things like hedges and hoardings and stuff like that. So these obviously are just to make the level look nice. They don't have any impact on how the level behaves. So those are the four sort of main categories of items that you can bring in. There is a filter. So if I wanted to look for all of the items in the destructible section that have got the word roof in them, then I can type in the name there, and it'll do that. And again, hitting add will bring it into the level. The selection thing we've already touched on already, in that if I pick, this doesn't work for scenery, by the way. It only works for building elements. So if I've picked a couple of these, and I want to change the material of those, then it's a question of going in there. I can say I'll make those red steel, update the material, and they're now a different material with different strengths and so on and so forth. And the last option in this selection part here is these two toggles. Now these two toggles actually relate to the challenge part of the this editor, and if I set these two items here to do not damage, what that does is that sets a flag within the game to say that these two items, when you play the level, they shouldn't be broken. And if the player does break them, then the challenge is effectively failed. And then there's a toggle at the bottom there to reverse that, so I can say set them so they are okay to be damaged. Obviously, if you want to undo what you've done. So that is where you would set or not set whether something needs to be damaged or not. And over here, in the challenge menu at the bottom, we've got some toggles here to say show me which things I can damage and which things I can't. So let me change that one back to do not damage it. At the moment, that's highlighted to say I want to see which things I can't break. I can turn that off if it means it's getting in the way of you building the building and seeing how it looks. But that's what that toggle's there for. That kind of covers off the selection building and that, but the undo button does exactly what it says, which is as I toggle back through the undo, it will just go through all of the things that we've done, anything that we've inserted, deleted, rotated, moved. It will just go work its way back all the way back to the very beginning of the session, should you want to. So that's how the undo button works. And then finally, the challenge section here at the end is for creating new challenges to go with this landscape. So the challenges are stored separately to the landscape. So if I create a building and press save, it doesn't save whatever's in here. So it's important if you're creating a challenge, what you need to do is you need to fill the details out in this section, give the challenge a name. So we're going to call this test challenge. We'll quickly create one to show how you would do that. So I fill in all of these fields, a description for it. Is there going to be a maximum amount of cash the person can use? If there is, then put that figure in there. How much do we need to break it by? What's the percentage? I'm just going to stick a time in here and say we've got 30 seconds to break the building. That's going to be the only stipulation for this. And then also there are a number of different types of explosive in the game. And what I'm going to do is say within this challenge how many of those explosives are available to us. So I've just said that they are. The user can have as many as they like. And then finally, there's an option to say when the building is destroyed and everything is settled, what's the maximum height that any of the debris can be? So I can say, if I wanted to, that I want the minimum height to be, say, 5 meters. We'll just change that to that. And if I turn that on, you can now see there's it's not a very good example because that's not very low, but if I change that, make that a little bit lower, and turn that on, you can now see that's 2 meters off the floor. That gives you an indicator of what that maximum height is after the building's been demolished. So if you wanted to set that as part of the challenge, you can do that. I'm going to set that back to 0 because I don't want that in there. So I've given it a name, I've given it a description, I've picked what I want the challenge to actually be. If I say save challenge, that is now saved, and I will save the level because we've added these bits in. I'll save that. It's warning me that it already exists, so we overwrite it. I say yes please, and if I now click on the return to the menu button up here at the top, hopefully you can now see that we have the option to play the level, because obviously we've created it, we've got some stuff in there, and there's a start challenge section has appeared here. So if there was more than one challenge for this level, then I could pick it using this pull down. You can see the description in there, and if I wanted to play the challenge, then I would click start. And if I want to edit this again, I can click edit. I will show you an example of a level that's got more than a couple of challenges. So this one, the old farm, has got a couple there, save the garage and low level. You can see the description tells you what's going on. I hope that gives you a bit more of an overview about the editing side of things. It is reasonably powerful, although clunky in places, and obviously will be improved as development continues. But I'm hoping it's a significant improvement on the efforts from the earlier Detonate games, because the editors were certainly not that friendly. What I'll do now is I'll just quickly do a challenge. I'll go back to the main menu and we'll quickly play a challenge, and I'll talk you through what I'm looking at in that. So I'm going to pick off the level that I want to play. In fact, I am going to use this one because it's not a bad example. And the level I'm going to choose is called Save the Garage. So I've got 40 seconds, £100 money to buy my explosives with, and I've got to destroy more than 50% of the buildings. And finally, the debris that's left has got to be less than 5.5 meters high. The garage part on the end here as well is also a part of the protected structure. So if I'll click on Start Challenge, it'll load the challenge up, and you're presented with the main game screen. So if I'd chosen to pick Sandbox, you don't get any of these challenge items in there, and you can simply click on Detonate and then destroy the building however you see fit. But because we've picked a challenge, we've got the description here, we've got what the criteria are, and the question marks are basically saying it's pending yet because we haven't started. We don't know whether these have been successful. So these are going to be check marks or cross marks depending upon how it's all gone. So what I'm going to do is I have actually got a saved, a bit of a cheat, I've got a saved explosive layout. The explosive layouts are all stored down here, and this one is called Garage. So I'm going to load that layout. You see that little yellow dot that's appeared there? That is my one explosive that I have placed, which costs £75. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit Detonate. And what will happen is the timer will count from 5 to 0, give us a bit of a warm-up. The explosive will detonate at the point when it's due to, which if I click on it, we can see all the details for it. So it's a very cheap type of explosive, black powder, gunpowder, with 75% of power for this particular charge. We want it to detonate on 0, so it's going to go bang the moment the timer reaches 0, and that's all the settings for that particular explosive there. So I'll confirm those and leave that as it is. So if I press Detonate now, what will happen is the timer will start. When the timer reaches 0, this will explode, and then the challenge will look to see whether you've been successful or not. Incidentally, if you have got a maximum height or a collateral element to the challenge, if you hover the mouse over those elements, it will show you what, for the collateral, it will show you what you're not supposed to be damaging, and for the maximum height, it will show you how high the debris can be when the building's being demolished. So that they just give you a bit of a visual indicator about what's going on there. So I'm going to click Detonate now. That'll go bang after when the clock reaches 0, and hopefully what we should see is more than 50% destroyed within 40 seconds when everything's settled down and everything that's on fire has gone out, because that's one of the criteria as well. Nothing should be more than 5.5 meters high, and we shouldn't have damaged any of the garage, so fingers crossed that works. Let's see what happens. So that's looking reasonably good. You can see here for the level statistics that we've destroyed nearly 90% of the building. The current structure is 5 meters high, so that's going to also be good. And obviously we're within our £75. So I would expect that when these things that are on fire have gone out, which is normally within a few seconds, the challenge will be successful. Let's just wait for these things to extinguish. There we go. So that challenge has been successful. Well, I hope the video has proved to be of some use, and helps you if you're wanting to create some buildings. Obviously, please do comment. I'd love any feedback at all, any bugs that you might find if you choose to download the game off of itch. I am, at the time of writing, I'm asking for $5 just as a sort of help pay the bills while I continue developing. If you do feel like contributing and you do feel like giving it a go, then I'd be extremely grateful. And also any feedback that you can give me will find its way into the game to improve it. And I look forward to seeing what your thoughts are. Thanks ever so much for watching, and speak to you again soon. Cheers. Bye now.